When I tell you, so many traders make the same mistake over and over. And I'm talking like I'm some guru or something, but I literally was no different until I understood a framework that I needed to implement so that I can learn from my mistakes the first time they happen. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I use this framework to go from making a mistake that's costing me money, learning from it, and then literally using it the next day to make money in the markets. But before we jump into the video, let me introduce myself. My name is Shangeb. I am a small retail day trader that is documenting his lessons, his insights, his observations, and I'm also sharing tools and tips that have been helping me along the way. My ultimate goal is, of course, to become a consistently profitable trader and to have some sort of income from this hobby. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the video. All right, so the first letter is A, and A stands for analyze. Now, during the analyze, there's 4 things that we want to really look for the mistake that we're trying to analyze. The 4 letters I want you to remember is T, T, R, R, but we'll get back to that in a second. Let's go over the live example. Okay, let's simplify what really happened. We took a trade right here that my go-to trade, which is fine. But the trade didn't end up playing out how we'd like it. We got stopped out at break even. Now here's where the mistake comes in. Based off the time in sales and how the candles were moving, I had a gut feeling that, listen, we may not break to the downside of this order. And I decided to take a second entry. However, we did indeed get stopped out. Now, the first step is you really want to look at this from an objective standpoint. The mistake that I made here was taking a trade that I wasn't fully aligned with. I took a trade that looked good on paper, but my intuition as a trader disagreed for its own reasons, which turned out to be valid, but I just didn't see them at the time. The first step is that you want to analyze the situation fully. Now that you're detached from the situation and you no longer have a trade at place, there's no reason for you to feel emotionally attached to something that has already happened. It's happened. It's done. Right now it's time to analyze from all perspectives. So the first things first is we can take a look at a delta, right? In this case, we have a rising bullish delta. This is after the case, and of course this isn't looking in hindsight, but even if we go along with time, we still can see that our delta is rising. While our delta is rising, so is our max delta. Our max delta is rising as well with it, which means that buyers are gaining control. And then also another follow through or another confirmation would be that our min delta is decreasing, which means that sellers are also, or aggressive sellers are losing control. Another observation, which would be a little bit of a bigger picture view in my case as a scalper, would be that the 5-minute and how we opened up in VWAP's 1 standard deviation, we had such a bullish candle, you think we would get more follow through, and we did not, right? We didn't get more follow through and we started to crash, which in this case, you may be like, well, then that would mean we didn't get enough follow through for the buys. We must see some follow through with the sells. Or in my case, from the knowledge that I already have, it could just mean we're mean reverting around VWAP, which is exactly how the day went. These are all observations that you make after the trade happens, because while the trade is happening, there's too much emotions and there's too much excitement or anxiety to even pay attention to these things in the first place. So the first step is that you want to completely analyze the situation after it happens. Now, from what I've noticed, there's 2 different types of mistakes. There's like the technical mistakes, like, execution mistakes, or just mistakes that aren't based off of like your psychology being bad at the moment, right? It's just like you didn't make a read that you should have, you didn't make an observation that you should have, and not all the time is psychological flaws. Sometimes you just missed observations that you probably should have been more aware of at a certain area. And in this case, this was a technical error. But like, if you're looking more to fix your psychological mistakes, I would really take a look at TTRR and kind of use that to identify the mistakes a little bit more. And let me explain that to you on the whiteboard really quickly. If you're dealing with psychological mistakes, take a look at this, right? The first thing that you want to identify is you want to identify what are the triggers for a psychological mistake. Let's say, for example, you're dealing with the psychological error as a trader of the fear of missing out, FOMO, right? You need to understand, well, what triggers, right, the thoughts that you have around, oh, I'm going to miss out this trade, right? And usually, majority of the times, it's like, you saw a really good spot to enter, you hesitated, you didn't enter, and now the trade is running away from you, and you start to think, I don't want to miss out on this trade. Well, as soon as you hear the word, you start to think, you can just kind of backtrack. And in this case, the trigger for fear of missing out was hesitation around an entry, and it ended up going in your favor. That is a trigger that starts the thoughts of, oh, I don't want to miss out on this trade. As soon as you understand, as soon as you figure out what thoughts you're having, and you just look back on what actions they had those thoughts, that's the trigger, right? And then the response, right? So what is the response? What were the response to the thoughts that you had, right? Like, I didn't want to miss out on this trade. So instead of looking for a better area that kind of made sense for a second entry, you just feared, FOMO'd in, right? You just jumped the gun, right? What was your response to the thoughts itself? And then you could just look at the results. Like, okay, cool. What was the result of that? You're just jumping in at a trying to chase price. You could look, well, I got a really bad entry, and I experienced drawdown that if I had just waited, I could have got a better entry and experienced less drawdown, and it probably caused me from a loss. Whatever it is, once you can kind of map out each one of your psychological mistakes in these 4 frameworks, you can just start to work on it, right? If you can eliminate the trigger, you eliminate everything else. Psychological mistake, gone. I had a really bad problem with over leveraging, and I realized that the trigger was that I was trying to make a whole bunch of amount of money as fast as possible, right? As soon as I just eliminated the need to make $1,000 or $2,000 on this trade right away, and I just stopped caring about that amount. As soon as I eliminated the trigger, everything else dissipated. Now, of course, it's easier said than done, right? It's not just like, I know the trigger. It's no longer a problem. No, you're gonna have to do some deep work, some shadow work. But I found this really helpful to deal with my psychological mistakes. The next letter is I, and I stands for identify. You can't skip this step in the framework. It is the most important step in the framework. It's where you make the insight itself. Now, there's 2 powerful questions that I love to ask in this part of the framework. The first question is, as I'm looking at it right now, is what observations or insights, if had I made, would have resulted in an exponentially better day? This first question allows you to filter, right? It allows you to filter, if you know what the Pareto rule is, right? 20% of the actions produce 80% of the results. This question allows you to filter for that 20%. Like, what are the key insights, the vital few key insights that had I made at the time would have changed the directory of my day? It allows you to really look for the things that are going to improve your PVE the most. And that leads me into my second question. What improvements, if I was to make, would improve my PVE? Now, PVE stands for personal expected value. In our last video, we talked about what expected value was in the relation towards edge. But this was a concept that I gained from Lance B at S&B Capital. He had coined this the bobblehead method, where essentially every day you would look for the key lessons and insights that would improve you as a trader, or your expected value as a trader, rather than how you did on the day when it came to P&L. This is just simply saying what lessons or insights that if I learn today will improve my value as a trader. That's all this question is asking. Now, going back to the live example, I had wrote out my insights in my journal. Also, I'm building a trading journal for future traders. It's going to be built for future traders by a future trader. I'm going to leave like a Google form sheet to collect emails for people who would like to try it out for absolutely free. All I ask is, if you're going to sign up for this to try it out, please be willing to give me like criticism and active criticism of what you think the platform should have and what rooms for improvement we can make. When I was looking at this question, like what observations, if I had made, would have been an changed the complete directory of my day. The first one that I realized was like, yo, listen, we opened up in VWAP's standard one deviation. Like, this for me is a clear indication that we're going to have a mean reversion type of day. The fact that we didn't get higher movement confirming the strong bullish move should have been a clear indication of mean reversing tendencies at the open, right? And then the next thing, right, the weakening of bearish delta here was warning sign number 1. I knew that if we couldn't make new lows at the closing of this 5-minute candle, we definitely would retrace this bear move. We had went from negative 550 delta to negative 900 delta, back down to negative 500 delta, and then we had went all the way to negative 79 delta, right? Just looking at this alone, we can tell that aggressive sellers were starting to weaken. These were the insights that had I made, right, I could have had a completely different day. And that is the power of asking yourself these two questions, because they really just help you look for the things that truly matter to your trading. So we went over A, right? A stands for analyze, and you want to analyze the full scenario, the full situation. We went over what I is. I means identify the two most important questions to help you make the insights that truly matter. Now it is for the M, which is modify. This is where you're going to make improvements based off of the insights that truly matter, right? This is where you take action. So now, as we're looking at the charts here, my first early entry was me trying to position myself early, right? Me trying to figure out where to position myself, because this was the exact same situation that I saw yesterday, right? We had a bearish move, but as we were having this bearish move, delta started to weaken. So as you can see, the previous day, I had started to think of how I could have treated this situation differently. And I said here, we could have positioned ourselves at the long of the wick field formed by the first strong delta at new lows, right? The first opposing delta. In this case, it would have been a bullish candle, right? We could have had put stops below new lows that formed, giving us a clear invalidation zone, and profits could have been taken with the idea that we were expecting mean reversion at the open, which means price may want to test VWAP again. I was already thinking of ways that I can modify my actions based off of the insights that I made. So when the next day rolled around, if we look at it, we didn't have the exact same scenario. You never will in trading, but you will have ones that are close to it. In this case, our first entry, we tried to position ourselves here, and this one honestly was my mistake because I didn't wait for this candle to close. This candle, had it just wait for it to close, would have shown me everything that I needed to know, and I wouldn't have entered off of it and saved myself a little loss. But it's okay, because the next candle, guess what I did? I analyzed, I looked for the key insight, and I modified. And this time, I waited for the candle to close with strong delta, closing pretty close to the max delta, and positioned myself at a nice little area for entry. But as you can see here, same case as yesterday. We're at new lows with weakening delta. Max delta started to rise, min delta started to fall. The same exact thing that we saw yesterday. But instead of taking a short here, we're able to find a really good entry to get a really clean 20 points on the NASDAQ. When you're modifying, make it your goal the next day to execute on the lesson that you learned. Like, if you over traded, make it the goal to trade 3 trades the next day, right? Make the goal specific to the lesson that you learned the prior day. So now that we went over a live example, we talked about the framework in total. Let's talk about practical application for you, the viewer, right? So remember, aim, analyze, identify, modify, right? First, for analyze, if it's a technical mistake, look at the whole overall picture, right? Gain a sense of the whole overall picture and all of the things that it's telling you, right? Take the time, now that you can pause the screen, look at what everything on the charts is telling you. Look at what your indicators are telling you. Look at what the time and sales are telling you. Look at what the order flow is telling you. Take a time to look at everything, because now you're not rushed, right? You can pause time. If you're dealing with a psychological error, right? Take the time to journal down. Use TTRR, right? Trigger, thoughts, response, and result. Use this to break down clearly and analyze the mistake, and then jump to identify, right? Identify the insights or observations. Ask yourself these two questions. One, what observations or insights had I made would have completely changed the results or exponentially changed the results of my trading day, right? And then two, ask yourself what improvements, if I make today, will increase my PVE, my personal expected value. What lessons, observations, or insights that if I take from today will increase my bobblehead. And then write it down and make it your goal the next day to focus on it. Make it your goal for the next week. Make it your goal for the next month. This is how you learn from your lessons the first time it happens. Until next time.